Hi everyone! We're going to take a look at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I'm going to their performance and also their underbelly for a complete behind-the-scenes tour. I've always loved the energy of BSO. It's like an outing for everyone. In this sold-out performance, the BSO played Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. You could hear a few notes here. Also, Elena Langer's Figaro Gets a Divorce. She's actually in the house.
Delighted to be here in Boston.
But the audience went wild for Enon Banatan, my new favorite piano soloist. I went back to the BSO on the next day to learn more about this symphony hall and the history behind this famous orchestra.
The founder of the Boston Symphony Orchestra is a man named Lee Higginson. This is him right here. This is actually a replica of the same portrait that hangs in the Fogg Museum at Harvard. Lee Higginson founded the Boston Symphony in 1881. He always had a passion for music his entire life. He originally, he was born in New York from a Boston family who then came back to Boston, went to Harvard and suffered from probably migraines. So he dropped out of Harvard and then decided to join his father's firm, which was a logistic business company, made a decent amount of money, was very successful, and decided that he wanted to pursue his passion and he wanted to become not only a musician, but a concert pianist. So he went to Europe. At the time, there really weren't a lot of orchestras in the United States that he could study under, so it made sense for him to go to Europe. So he studied there for a few years, then realized that maybe this wasn't for him. Does anyone want to guess? We're talking 1850s, early 1860s. What would have been a common way for medics to handle maladies? Bloodletting. Right, so it caused enough nerve damage that there was no way he could become a concert pianist. If he couldn't become a concert pianist, he was going to do the next great thing. He was going to build an orchestra. And thus, this is why we have the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So he toured Europe just like he did when he wanted to become a pianist. And he observed things that he didn't quite understand or he didn't quite agree with as far as the European model. He noticed that European models existed, that they had multiple different musicians practice and rehearse under different choreographers and different conductors in different music houses and rehearsal spaces. He came to Boston and said, okay, we're going to found the Boston Symphony Orchestra. We're going to have one group of people playing under the same person with the same artistic director, the same conductor, the same rehearsal space. And that's what Higginson founded. Right now, we can say that that makes so much sense, but in 1881, when the Boston Symphony was founded, it was really revolutionary.
Were there any other rivals? I can imagine if someone wants to start something that grand. No?
No. The Handel Haydn Society existed in Boston, in the United States, but no, the Boston Symphony was
the only.
And he was the model that came in and said, let's have one orchestra, one rehearsal setting, one place, one artistic director. No, that was Higginson.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Yep. Symphony Hall is the first hall in history to be built with scientifics in mind. It's not just looking pretty, which it is, I mean, it's pretty impressive, but it's meant to sound the way that it is. If you think for a second where we are in downtown Boston, we just take a second. You don't hear anything. Right, it's quiet. It's because this hall is made in what we call a box within a box. So you'll see that there are air chambers on all sides of us. If you're here for a concert, you won't hear ambulances, you won't hear people honking. It's a really pretty quiet hall. So when Higginson decided that his hall or his orchestra needed a new home and he decided to build it here, he wanted it to sound the best of the best. And he had heard of an assistant professor of physics named Wallace Clement Sabine. So Higginson originally really loved the idea that Boston, we're talking like again the 1880s, 1890s, was the Athens of America. He wanted Greek pillars and it almost to look like a theater. And Sabine said, I don't think that's a good idea. A good measurement in 1900 was considered between 2 and 3 seconds. That's the reverberation. So the time that it takes me to go like this and the sound to go away, 2 to 3 seconds. The hall was clocked when we opened in 1900 at 2.3 seconds. That's pretty good. Right now, it's 1.9. If you look at the left and right walls, they go like this. If you put a pencil on that stage, it will roll down. It looks like a megaphone, but megaphones project sound out. It's a very, very shallow stage, which means that the sound is going to come at you much, much more. If you look at the lattice work up here on the balconies, it's not solid. The lattice work allows the sound to not get trapped up in there. It's also only 3 seats deep on the second or the first balcony and only 2 on the second balcony. It's not that deep. So you're not getting sound trapped up there. My favorite part of the entire Symphony Hall is the ceiling above us. You've got a lot of check spaces. There is no way that sound can go up and come back down again. You won't hear an echo. If you're sitting here and you're hearing something like, let's say, the Messiah, imagine if you hear the sound of the contralto going up and down and up and down. That would be really not pleasant as a listener. And why there are only 3 halls in the world that sound the way that we do, it's because we're based on science.
So the other 2 were Concertgebouw and Musiktheater in Vienna. In the first few rows at the stalls, I found these peculiar little plates. And, sure enough, there's a secret underneath.
One of the wonders of this building is its perennial ability to reinvent itself. The sober, straight-backed chairs disappear through a secret elevator in the middle of the floor. And voila, it's pop season. Part of Henry Lee Higginson's plan to bring Boston the lighter kind of music he'd heard in German beer gardens.
We went to the basement, and here's the elevator.
All of this would be all the rows of chairs that we've seen. So we take all of these tables and chairs. Well, actually, I should start. We take first, remove all of the rows of chairs and 6, unbolt them, take them one by one on the elevator, put them here, put them here. And once everything is removed, then we take all of these tables and chairs. You can see, I mean, So during Boston Symphony season, Symphony Hall seats 2,600 people. During Boston Pops, it's 2,300, so you lose a few seats.
While I'm backstage, it really lets me geek out on the technical side of a production.
Here's where most of the orchestra members would warm up, unless of course you're a soloist or a visiting artist, in which case you need the green rooms.
You probably won't appreciate how big the Symphony Hall is until you've walked through this maze.
We're also unique in that we own this hall. We rent it out, as we are. You can probably hear, you can see right there, H&H is playing inside today at 3. We use this as a venue. We've had fashion shows, car shows, badminton tournaments, weddings, you name it. This is not only just a space that rehearses music and plays music, but it really is a space for presentations for the entire city.
The other thing I noticed the day before was that in between the little angels on the balcony are just empty white spaces, except for the golden plaque at the top of the stage which says Beethoven.
I've got asked quite a few times, well, why is it only Beethoven? Like, what about all these other plaques? You would think like Mozart or Bach or Handel. Nope, just Beethoven. He's the only one up there. So in a strange way, just as European halls would have a name that was dedicated to the reigning monarch, ours is almost dedicated to Beethoven, which is kind of appropriate because the piece of music that opened on October 15th when this hall opened was Beethoven's Mrs. Salinas.
Who is this secret committee that has so much power to veto?
I would love to know that, and I have absolutely no
Bach.
I don't think anyone knows that. I think it just has been a story for the ages. I don't think that that's public knowledge.
There are so many fun facts behind this place. Like the medallions on the staircase that actually say Boston Music Hall. There's a story behind it. In the hallway, there's a Titanic musician's memorial.
There's the scene that as the ship is going down, the musicians are still playing. They're going to go down with the ship. That's pretty factual as far as we know. If anyone's been to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which is just down the street, Isabella Stewart Gardner was a very, very passionate supporter of the arts, specifically the BSO. She had her own set of seats, and if anyone sat in them, oh boy. But she was so struck when she learned that those musicians kept on playing for comfort going down with the ship, that she really wanted to make sure that there is some sort of plaque or something that was dedicated and recognized what they did. As far as we know, they didn't actually play in Boston. We don't know if they had any ties to Boston.
The Symphony Hall is like a museum. There's not enough time to explain everything, like these musical instruments. How weird. But I'll leave you with the sound of the organ. If you're ever at the BSO or the Pops, be sure to look up and down and all around.